welcome to Jeremy's Retro Bar. I'm Jeremy and this is my Retro Bar, and this week we're talking tools. That's right, things that we use to help us make retro computing easier. These will be things to work on a computer, to clean a computer, to fix a computer. But of course, first, we're gonna need to make ourselves a drink. So this week's drink, I'm just gonna make a simple classic daiquiri. Not a fancy daiquiri, not a frozen daiquiri. And we're gonna start with 1.5 ounces of light rum. We're gonna add 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup. Then we're gonna add 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. Then we're just gonna add some ice. And we're gonna shake. And then we're just gonna strain that into a chilled glass. And there we have a classic daiquiri. Cheers. That's delicious. All right, let's go look at some tools. So what I kind of wanted out of this video was just a kind of beginner's guide to all of the tools that you need with retro computing, because I found in my life that I would constantly spend money on the computers and keep getting more and more computers and not spend the minuscule amount of money to just get a couple of things that could fix or make better all of those computers that I was getting. And so this is just kind of a, hey, here's a list of things, and it's not the most comprehensive. It's not for the super advanced. This is more just, these are the tools that are most commonly used whenever you're working with vintage machines. So anyway, with that preface, let's get started. I think the first thing that you should get is a driver set. And that's one of these that has the little bits, and they go into your driver, and you can use it to unscrew pretty much most screws that you're gonna come across. You don't need to get this big one that I got from iFixit. I think this little one is also just as good. And it has most of the driver bits that you would use for most things. They're not expensive. I know there's versions on Amazon as well. They're great. And it's gonna allow you to open up most devices. Rather than just having a regular Phillips, this is gonna cover all the sizes of Phillips, plus all the Torx bits, plus all the kind of weird other style bits. Now, in that same vein, I think for whatever device that you are trying to get into, you need to get the specialty tools for that device. For one that I'm thinking of is the long T15 screwdriver that will allow you to open up a Mac, a classic Mac. Other things could be game bit screwdrivers to get into Nintendo devices, or this putty knife that's actually used to get into Mac Mini. There's also suction cups to get into the certain era of iMacs. So just kind of look at the devices that you're going to be working on and get those tools beforehand, and of course you'll use them again in the future. So I think that is a super important thing as well. The next most important, I think, is a spudger. These are these little plastic flat-ended, kind of like a screwdriver, and then they have this pointy end on the other end. These are great for opening up plastic cases because if they get stuck, the plastic isn't going to destroy the plastic that you're trying to open. So that will keep the cases from getting scratched. Next up is a hemostat. And that's just kind of a scissor-like device that has a grip end on it, and also it can lock in place if you're holding something really tight. I use these all the time. If I drop something, or a lot of times for changing jumpers on a motherboard, if you have it installed in the case, it's just much easier to grab the jumper using this guy to be able to get in there and work. I love this, it's so good. I think another thing that is very important, especially if you have an old keyboard, is a keycap puller. And a lot of times these come with newer keyboards, mechanical keyboards, but if you don't have one, they're super, super cheap, and it'll allow you to pop the keys off, clean your keyboard out, get all the dirt and hair and whatever's in a keyboard and get that back up to a good working condition. So now we can get into and work on our devices, and now the most common thing that we're gonna do with them is simply clean them. They're gonna be gross, and we're gonna need to clean these because these are old computers. So, the first thing that I would say that you should get for cleaning is canned air, or in this case I have this XPower, which is a motorized, more environmentally friendly canned air alternative, just for simple surface cleaning on the outside. Just some glass cleaner. Windex is the kind of the brand name. I think I have the generic version here, but that's gonna get rid of a lot of the things that are on the outside of a computer and help get that cleaned up. And now to clean more nasty stuff, I've got IPA, isopropyl alcohol, and that is used to get rid of, if you have a plastic case, getting rid of some scuffs on the plastic case, or of course, anything that's gotten onto the motherboard, if the caps have popped and there's some goo on there, IPA is awesome for cleaning that. And the higher the alcohol level, the better. Of course, be careful if you're using this on anything with paint because it will remove it. And of course, to use the IPA or whatever else we're using, cotton swabs. I've got two different kinds here, just a generic huge pack that you would normally get at a pharmacy, and then these fancier ones with the longer wooden sticks. Both are great, both work great. Now another thing I like to use a lot are these cotton pads. This is more external. They provide a little bit of friction, and they're nice because you can really get some parts clean using these pads. So I really like these. I mean, you can probably do the same with a microfiber cloth. Next up is white vinegar. Now that is if we have some battery leakage. The white vinegar will neutralize anything that the acid is doing, anything that the battery acid is doing, and so white vinegar is nice to have. This is a giant container. You don't need to get one this big, but that's what I have. And then of course for the external cases, again, I've got Goo Gone to remove tape and stickers and things like that. And a lot of times people like to put stickers on old computers, and so this is your friend when doing that. In dealing with electronics and actual connections, I've got contact cleaner. So this is good for like edge connectors, things like that, to really get those contacts cleaned up and anything that kind of formed on the surface of those contacts clean. Again, for cleaning the external part of cases, baking powder. You just use this with a little bit of water and a brush, and it just is a little bit of an abrasive, and so it's going to get in there, these little grooves, and clean those out. To actually do the cleaning, if we're dealing with the electronics, I suggest just getting a kit of these anti-static brushes. It's different shapes and sizes. I seem to have a lot of the same one right here, but so these are nice because if you're using the alcohol or anything on the surface of the electronics, they're going to be safe and not create static. And then for anything else, an old toothbrush. I just get a pack of the cheapest ones that you can buy, and use those until they get too disgusting. But these are really good for cleaning. So now we're going to go a little bit more advanced, and this is dealing with actually repairing the electronics. Now, I recommend that everybody do this and get into this and try it, because it's going to make working with these old devices just a lot nicer, because you'd be able to fix the things for fairly cheap. But of course the cost on this part is going to be the most expensive of any of the sections. So first thing I recommend is a soldering iron, and I have an okay one. I'm probably going to get a better one eventually, but this one's pretty good. It allows me to control the temperature and different tips that you can get for it, and it's pretty good. But soldering iron is a must whenever repairing electronics. The next thing you need to be able to do is to desolder, and I feel this is how most things go. If you are very skilled and you know what you're doing, you can go ahead and use desoldering braid and kind of get anywhere you need to, get any components off of anything. Desoldering braid is great for that. But I am less good at desoldering, and so I've spent the money on a desoldering pump or a desoldering iron. And this actually has an electronic pump built in that sucks the solder out into this little component. And this is, to me, the thing that made actually working on components a lot easier. This is the thing that made my life so much nicer when dealing with that. And I highly recommend it, but it is very expensive to get. There are some cheaper versions, but I know this is kind of the industry standard, the Hako. And yeah, it's great. I cannot talk highly enough about the desoldering iron, the desoldering pump. With soldering, you're gonna need flux and solder to actually perform the soldering. And again, I would watch some other channels where they go into how to solder, but those are two essential things to need for that. To actually see problems with your components, a very helpful tool is a multimeter. These are really cheap, actually. You can get this, I think this was less than $20. And it's gonna help you know if a circuit is broken, if it's got current between the two. They're just very useful as a troubleshooting tool. And again, I highly recommend getting one. Next would be actually working with the wires themselves. I recommend getting a nice wire cutter. I like these little side snip angled ones. These are my favorite to work with. They're great for cutting legs off of capacitors. They're great for cutting wires. They're so small and useful and just great. I really, really like this style. Last would be a wire stripper. You can get this style, but I recently got this style, which I know is more again for electricians, but it auto sizes to the gauge of wire that you have, and I haven't really seen any problems with it. I haven't done it on super small or super thin wire, but this has been my favorite way to wire strip. So this one should go without saying, but it is essential, and that is a PC of some sort. I'd actually probably recommend a Mac if you're a Mac user, because you can run both Mac and PC operating systems on it. But if not, just any PC, any old PC even, you can actually get, you know, an older machine to run most of the things. And this is because a lot of the transfer software for certain things always seems to be run for Windows, and always it's old or not updated, and so it's just nice to have this to be able to run a lot of the software. In addition to that, getting things onto old computers, you want to get a USB floppy drive. So these are nice to one, back up floppies, make disk images from them on modern computers, and also to get things onto some old computers. You can go ahead and write to a floppy and get that into an old computer. So in the same ballpark, a USB CD and DVD burner. Now, you might have a built-in one into a tower machine, and that works too. It's just a quick and easy way to get media onto old PCs. This is another way to transfer files and get things onto the vintage hardware easy, and that is a GoTech, a floppy emulator for your device. So GoTech would be for the PC or the Amigas, and I think Atari machines can use a GoTech. And for the Mac, you'll need to get the floppy EMU for the Mac or the Apple II machines. But these make it just so much easier to get things onto them. So instead of having to write floppies or make sure that it's in the right format, you just throw a disk image on a USB drive and pop it into the GoTech. So another way to transfer things to an old computer is through serial cables. And so I do highly recommend getting whatever serial cable is proper for your device, but a USB for the modern computer, and then in this case it's a 9-pin serial for a PC, but there's also an Apple serial connector if you need to transfer things to an Apple II. So yeah, different serial cables will allow you to transfer stuff as well. right, and finally, we're gonna talk about consumables. So one of the most obvious is just CDs, DVDs, floppies, just blank discs that you can write whatever you want to and get things transferred between things. The other consumable that I would recommend is a screw kit. And that is just an assortment of screws that are standard PC size screws that will allow you to replace screws if you ever lose them. This one here from StarTech is my favorite. It seems to cover most of the standard things that you would deal with AT or ATX cases. It is the most expensive one, but also I think it's one of the best ones. This is another one that I just found on Amazon. This is maybe not so much on the essential list, but it's one of those nice to haves around, and that is DuPont wires and connectors. And that's just this standard that like works with the Raspberry Pi and things like that. And these guys will slot into these, and you can get the wires with 2 male ends or male-female or female-female. This is female-female. And then these little guys, and you can use it to solder onto whatever device that needs headers. I mostly use it to mod the Gotex so that you can run that OLED screen on them. They're just nice to have around. And then of course, last but not least, coasters. I've got different coasters to put your drink. These are actually like a silicone that looks like a floppy disk, which I think are cool. These are Mario themed, which I think are great, and that's gonna keep your workspace clean and tidy and not get any water rings on the wood desks. So anyway, those are probably my most commonly used items when working on vintage computers, both opening them up, cleaning them, fixing them. But yeah, I think those are the most common things. And the only thing that I'd kind of add to that list that I can't really get a shot of is an organized storage space. Whether that's just a shelf, whether that's a dresser that you've converted, like whatever it is, just something to put everything in and that everything has a place. I think that is key to and continuing the hobby and making it so that you don't make yourself crazy when working on all these different projects. But anyway, that's about all I had this week. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and we'll see you next time.